Parents, we have a massive health crisis going on with our kids, and no one is talking about the cause. Last week, the CDC updated their most recent numbers on autism. It's up to 1 in 31 kids. If we backtrack just 25 years ago, it was 1 in 150. If you go back 50 years, it was 1 in 1,000. There is something massive going on here, and no one is talking about what is actually causing it. Most parents that are given that diagnosis for their kid, they don't have a whole lot of hope. They're told that it's just a genetic thing, and maybe there's going to be changes, maybe not, but there's nothing you can do. Just keep with the therapies and hope for the best. That is an exhausting and really a demoralizing thing to hear, that there's no hope for improvement, and we don't really understand why this is taking place and why it is increasing at such a massive route. Regardless of whether you're going that traditional route and doing those traditional therapies and supports, or maybe you're someone who's gone into a more holistic perspective, you've done functional medicine work, made diet, supplement changes, detoxes, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, all those good things, right? Regardless of where you've come from, the families that we meet are still struggling. They're still looking for hope, and there's still a missing piece to that story. Absolutely, we can see improvements and changes by addressing the lifestyle component of it and getting to that side of it. But autism is way more than just an immune and a gut dysregulation. There's a deeper neurological dysfunction that's taking place. And until that is addressed, they're going to be stuck and they're going to stay locked in. So that's what this video is for, parents. In this video, I want to walk through the new approach that I guess isn't so new anymore, right? Over the last 15 years, it's helped thousands of families have crazy different changes for their kids because you're coming at it from a root cause based approach instead of looking at just trying to address the symptoms. So I can't help but talk about this without thinking about some of our amazing Thrive families and kiddos throughout the years. And recently, I think of a little boy named Rowan that is kind of in that range, right? He's not communicating well for his age at 4 or 5 years old. Major sensory dysregulation challenges, major emotional disconnection. In just the first month, 6 weeks of his care plan, it's been so cool to see all of the differences. His mom, pretty much every time we see them, he's saying new words every single day. He's more connected, he's more regulated, he's sleeping better. All of these amazing shifts by addressing things from a neurological perspective. So that's what I want to walk you through of what does that look like and how does that actually get to the bottom of why kids are struggling. But first we have to understand, what is that traditional model, right? What are they saying is going on? Typically, they just look at autism as a genetic issue. They're saying, you know what, this is just a genetic thing. We haven't exactly figured out what genes cause it or what genes are the triggers, right? There's no autism gene that's been discovered. There's not going to be. But that is the primary blame that's given, right? Recently, they are forced to start to accept that there's an environmental component to it, but there's very little talk about something besides just genetics. That doesn't make any sense though, because you can't just blame genetics on something that has skyrocketed in such a short time frame, right? Genes don't change over just a handful of decades. That takes thousands of years. And the typical answer to that is, well, it's just better diagnosis. It's better awareness of what's going on. And there certainly has been that process, but still isn't the full story. You can think, moms and dads, think back to you in a classroom growing up at school, right? You think of the kids around, you'd almost never heard of a kid struggling with those sort of communication and sensory challenges, and it is now so prevalent. It's 1 in every 31, which is still such a mind-blowing statistic. So that cannot be the full story. It's just genes, it's just better diagnosis. And the other thing that has been a recent hot topic is the concept of neurodiversity, right? There's just different brains that are wired differently. Some people learn differently, some people relate emotionally differently. And that concept is absolutely needed. And I wish there was more talked about of how we are all unique. But that does not address what we're talking about. Neurodiversity needs to be a topic that is discussed in the school and the education setting, right? Instead of teaching every kid the same way, we should address it and apply it to that scenario. But instead, we're using it, in my words, or in my perspective, a lot of times we're using neurodiversity for just an excuse and almost a cop-out to say oh, this kid isn't struggling, there's nothing wrong, they're just neurodiverse, they're just a little different. Yes, there's a whole bunch of unique and quirky personalities. That isn't describing a kid who is unable to communicate, unable to use the bathroom themselves, unable to regulate their emotions. That's not neurodiverse. That is a kid who is stuck and locked in stress. So autism is something that's affecting the motor system, the gut, the immune, the sensory processing world. It's affecting and touching all aspects of development. So what is actually going on? we see the underlying cause being rooted in what is called the perfect storm. The perfect storm is the story of kids who are stuck in stress, stuck in survival mode, often from early on or even day one of life. We see those early factors as really three primary things. One is fertility challenges and then high stress pregnancies. That fertility stress and pregnancy stress means that newborn is coming through that pregnancy just bathed in stress hormones, right? The adrenaline, cortisol, all that fight or flight pathway, their survival mode is being hardwired into their neurology. So we start life with more stress. What happens then, sometimes because of those stressors, is we end up with more birth intervention and birth trauma. C-section rates have skyrocketed up to 35, almost 40% in some areas. The incidence of vacuum and forceps use, they're all going through the roof, and that is going hand in hand with these massive changes in chronic disease and something like autism. What happens when we have that birth trauma is there's a physical injury, specifically in an incredibly important, incredibly delicate part of that newborn. Their brainstem, their upper neck region, is what's regulating and controlling a lot of these overall wellness and optimal development functions, and that is what is taking the brunt of that early injury and that early damage at the start to life. So that can't be, that's something that is affecting kids in a massively increased rate in recent years, right? Seeing those C-sections and that birth trauma rate go hand in hand with a lot of the rates of these chronic diseases. So we have fertility challenges, we have birth trauma, birth intervention, and then we have early exposure to toxins and early exposure to medications, right? Antibiotics in that first couple months, first year of life is way more common than it used to be. Environmental toxic exposures have been increasing in recent years, and those are all underlying factors and stressors that are combining to create a child who is stuck in survival mode. Because we see the kid that's in that school age or toddler years being diagnosed with autism, so frequently their start to life was these things, plus a colicky, refluxy, constipated baby, probably couldn't latch or nurse very well. A lot of times there even some more to the story where they had a severe diagnosis or maybe they were premature. That start to life matters, and no one is talking about how important that is. So what happens when we have that start to life? I mentioned there's that delicate brainstem upper neck regulation that is completely disrupted. That dysregulation turns into a fight or flight response in the whole nervous system. Our bodies are really well adapted and really well regulated. They can go back and forth between stress and in a well regulated state. The problem is when we get stuck in stress, when the only thing that kid has ever known is survival mode, stuff like digestion and immune regulation and higher level brain function and cognition, that doesn't matter. Because if you were truly just a warrior trying to survive the day-to-day life, it doesn't matter if you can regulate your emotions or if you can communicate properly. You're just needing to live to see the other day. So we have this whole cascade that comes from that when a kid is stuck in survival mode. One specific gut component of that comes from the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a cranial nerve that comes out of the base of your skull, runs right by those first couple cervical vertebrae, and it is massively impacted during that birth trauma, and birth injury. The vagus nerve regulates digestion, it regulates our gut health, and so that's where you'll find kids that maybe the gut intake is perfect, right? The nutrition, the supplements, the diet is looking good, but they're still struggling. They're still either dealing with belly pains or constipation, or they're dealing with this whole cascade of dysbiosis and the microbiome's off. It could be the nervous system that's missing, right? It could be that vagus nerve piece that is dysregulated that is then leading to all of the other secondary concerns. So it's more than just the gut. We got to get to the foundation. And we talk about this in a kind of a triangle hierarchy, right? You probably can't see these the whole description here, but I want to walk you through this hierarchy of development. The foundation here is where everything starts. It's where development starts. It starts in the central nervous system or the autonomic nervous system. That is that gas versus brake or stress versus wellness balance of the nervous system. That is step one of development. And so when that is off, you've got to start there to heal. Unfortunately, most of the therapies are above that, right? It's that second tier is the neuromotor tone. It's movement. It's those patterns. Above that, it's the gut and the immune system. And then the very, very top is more brain-based behavior interventions, ABA. Those things aren't necessarily bad, right? We want our kids to care about the nutrition and the wellness and the things that they're exposed to. We want to have good gut health. We want to be taking appropriate behavior interventions. But if you're focusing on those higher tiers and that foundation is stuck, you're going to be building on a faulty foundation and never get the impact out of it that you should. So addressing this from the ground up, addressing that foundation first, and then layering the holistic functional approaches on top makes for a massive different impact. So it's more than just the gut. It's more than just the immune dysregulation. It's that central nervous system dysregulation that is at the foundation of all of these challenges. So we got to address the cause, and that's what our focus is, to take it full circle of why are we talking about this. That is the point of what we do at Thrive. Our neurological exam is focused on finding that stress. Our case history is focused on listening to you, moms and dads, hearing your story, hearing what those early indicators of that stress were, so that we can piece together those connection points and make sure we have a game plan to undo that stress, right? The scans find it, and then we go through care, doing those progress scan check-ins and finding that healing journey and making sure that we're unlocking that ability to heal for that kid, so that then the other stuff that you're doing, the other interventions, can actually be more effective. That is how Rowan's parents started, right? They did the scans, they did that analysis, and they said, hey, this is what's going on with our kid, and this is what we can do about it. And they actually found out about Thrive, and they, before they even started here under care, they went to a perfect storm workshop. Now, depending on when you're listening to it, maybe we have one about to come up, or maybe you just missed one, stay tuned to our events page on our website for that. But if you're listening here now as I'm recording this, May 1st, is when we're doing our next workshop. It's next week, next Thursday night, 7 p.m. at the Sports Grill here in Cranberry Township. And I would really encourage you, if you have a kid who is struggling with autism, with some sort of chronic health challenge like that, please show up. We're gonna go through more stories of hope. We're gonna go through all the science that explains and backs up what we're talking about in this video, and make sure that you understand what it will take to get your kid out of the storm and get them healing and get them on the right path. So reach out to the team. We'll put the link to the perfect storm here in this video, and please show up and let us help your kid get unlocked. Let us help your kid thrive.